and the time has come to complete this series of episodes dedicated to composers working with 2D music projects. To wrap up, I bring you the eclectic compositions by Yuki Honda, Kyohei Yamamoto, Atsushi Harada, and Kan Takahiro. Let's kick off this episode of SEIYUU Lounge. Welcome to SEIYUU Lounge. I am your host Vanessa, and today's topic is 2D music composers and their quirks. Yuki Honda, Kyohei Yamamoto, Atsushi Harada, and Kan Takahiro. After having a lot of fun with this series of episodes fully dedicated to the composers behind some of your favorite 2D groups or even 2D music franchises, it's time to wrap up in style. So this time around, you and I are going to talk about not 2 but 4 composers, neatly wrapping up this series of episodes about 2D music composers. One composer that you will know for sure, especially if you like fancy pop or jazz music, is Yuki Honda. For those of you that do not know, Yuki Honda is one of the most popular composers, part of the composing team Art Refect. If you want fancy, jazzy, or elegant compositions, Yuki Honda can deliver those day in, day out. There is only another composer that I consider equally exquisite when it comes to it, and it is Satoru Kuwabara, and even according to Yuki Honda, Kuwabara's compositions are crazy in his eyes and ears. But back to Yuki Honda. He started working as a composer around 2009, and since then he has more than 200 credits as a composer for 2D groups such as Beit, S.E.M, Café Parade, and Legenders in the Idolmaster S.E.M franchise, Eden, Akatsuki, Rabbids, Valkyrie in the Ensemble Stars franchise. He has been a long-time composer for Takuma Terashima and Hiroshi Kamiya, and since 2019 he has been responsible for taking Shunichi Toki and Makoto Furukawa's jazz sound a step forward, creating crazy good songs. In a way, Yuki Honda's compositions are the reason Shunichi Toki and Makoto Furukawa's music has been so impressive as of late. The swing and bounce he adds to their music is unreal, making these two SEIYUU artists stand out for their stylish jazz and rock sound. Honda has also lent his talents to songs by Tasuku Hatanaka, Sparkloo, and Zings. And yet again, you will find him adding a unique groove to all the songs he composes for them, regardless if it is an R&B ballad or a fancy city pop or funk-inspired tune. There's something about Yuki Honda's songs that always makes me easily spot him. The progressions in his songs, the melodies he chooses, and the energy in his disruptive compositions make him an amazingly unique composer in my eyes and ears. If you are a fan of intricate piano performances and warm drums, you'll love his compositions. However, if you're just coming across Yuki Honda and you want to easily spot his compositions without checking the credits, well, he is not that easy to spot. It takes a bit of experience listening to his compositions to find those details in the progressions or even in the groove he adds to those. I wouldn't say it is impossible, but let's be real, he is up there with Satoru Kuwabara and Akira Takizawa when it comes to shifting music genres, composing in a wide variety of those, and not bringing many or any quirks from one to another. Given how versatile his composition style is, you could be mistaken to think it is actually Satoru Kuwabara or even Atsushi Harada composing the song when, as a matter of fact, it is a Yuki Honda original. Actually, many of Art Refect's composers are well versed in jazz and funk music, which makes them not as easy to tell apart as you would love to. And look at these, I brought 3 of them to this episode just to make things difficult. Actually, I didn't intentionally do so, but let's say they are not the easiest to tell apart in Art Refect. When it comes to the style of Honda's compositions, you already have an idea after all I just said. Everything he composes is stylish. There is a maturity to the sound he composes that makes the artists he composes for stand out for an elegance and mature vibe you do not see or hear often. Some of his best compositions for 2D groups or SEIYUU artists include Makoto Furukawa's Do Keshito Sadness and Shunichi Toki's Good For. Kyohei Yamamoto. The next composer up is Kyohei Yamamoto. He is also part of the Art Refect team of composers and has worked since 2009 for SEIYUU artists and 2D groups, almost in equal measures. He is best known for lending his talents to Fine and Akatsuki in the Ensemble Stars franchise, as well as Trigger in the Idolish 7 franchise, and Makoto Furukawa. He has also worked as an arranger for Gyroaxia's Scatter. As far as his composition style goes, Kyohei Yamamoto loves to create cinematic soundscapes that are rich in detail, and as such, he pans and spreads out all elements around the listener in order to be one with the performance. In a way, Yamamoto's compositions put you at the center of the action, ready to experience a performance of a lifetime. When you listen to his compositions, you will notice that he doesn't put a particular focus on a specific instrument. Well, that is because of how he wants you to take in the soundscape rather than being fully focused on a specific element in the composition. In a way, his compositions direct the listener's attention to the vocals, which is quite interesting. Expect Yamamoto's compositions to have a punchy bass line and brass, as those are the driving force in most of his music. You can notice that in Trigger's Treasure and Makoto Furukawa's Mosaic to Fairy Tale. The piano parts are usually technical and quite fast, relying a lot on arpeggios as transitions in the composition. Guitars are fast and funky, and yet again you will notice in both songs I just mentioned that there is no specific instrument standing out. All stand out, and all point to the vocals. Yamamoto's compositions make the singer stand out, especially if they are particularly technical and overall good singers. In a way, you and I are already covering what is Kyohei Yamamoto's style. He loves brass and technical piano parts, so expect those aplenty. If the composition is upbeat, funky and danceable while embracing jazz music, you're coming across one of his compositions. Atsushi Harada. Atsushi Harada is also a composer part of the Art Refect team and quite possibly one of the most experienced, as he has been active since 2008. He used to be a solo artist, something that quickly explains how his compositions are more emotional on the vocal end than Yuki Honda or Kyohei Yamamoto's. The fact that all compositions are crafted with the vocals into attention right from the start makes it so that Harada's compositions are more simple than the ones by the two composers I just mentioned, yet at the same time they are the most emotional. Atsushi Harada has been composing character songs and music for 2D groups since 2013. He is best known for his work with Legenders and Flags in the Idolmaster S.E.M franchise, Akatsuki in the Ensemble Stars franchise, Trigger in the Idolish 7 franchise, and Makoto Furukawa. As you can tell from the groups I just mentioned, his music has a lot of drama to itself. At the same time, the songs do come close to sounding epic, even if not intentionally. Atsushi Harada composes rock, pop, jazz and ballads, and when he changes music genres, you won't be able to tell that a composition is his. When it comes to Atsushi Harada's style, I dare say he is not easy to spot. First, because his compositions have jazz at their core, and in a way, he kind of has a sound that is in harmony with what almost all composers at Art Refect have. Then, because even if he changes music genres, which he does between some of the groups I just mentioned, there are no quirks carrying over between them. So, to spot Atsushi Harada's compositions, you will have to pay attention to the emotions and how vocal the instrumental piece is. Of course, when you come across a song, you come across the full version with the vocals included, so that's not easy, especially for untrained ears, to spot. But when you listen to the instrumental versions of his compositions, that should be clear to you that among all of Art Refect's composers, Atsushi Harada has the compositions that are more vocal. It feels like the instrumentals are singing. That is a unique feature in his compositions that helps singers standing out. When the instrumental is already tailored to make the vocals shine, giving a boost to the key or how the progression or vocal direction should go, it makes it so that the song is easier to sing for the performer, but also make it hummable for the listener. What does this mean? It means that the SEIYUU performing the songs have an easier time, and thus, listeners easily get his songs in our heads and will find ourselves humming to the instrumental and immediately filling it in with lyrics. Just listen to Trigger's Heavenly Visitor and notice how the composition, especially the guitar, serves as a guide for the vocals throughout. When you listen to the instrumental version, you'll easily sing the song on tempo because the lead, basically the guitar riff, is made to complement the vocals from the tempo even down to the key that the vocals should have. Atsushi Harada's compositions have this unique characteristic that the more you listen to his music, the better you can spot it. Differences between Yuki Honda, Kyohei Yamamoto and Atsushi Harada based on Makoto Furukawa's From Fairy Tail. With all these composers being extremely good at bringing forth an addictive and stylish jazz sound, and at times dabbling a bit into dance music and acid jazz, it is perfectly okay for you to now think that you can't actually tell their compositions apart. With that being said, most of what I talked about regarding their characteristics, preferred music genres, and composition quirks will in some way overlap. So what better way to illustrate their differences than by comparing their compositions within the same album? And that album is Makoto Furukawa's From Fairy Tail. For those of you that are not aware, Makoto Furukawa is best known as a voice actor, but as a solo artist he is also the very first SEIYUU to ever fully embrace a career as a jazz music performer. And the big reason why his jazz sound is so addictive and varied is because he has Yuki Honda, Kyohei Yamamoto, Atsushi Harada and even Satoru Kuwabara in his composition team. So to tell apart Yuki Honda, Kyohei Yamamoto and Atsushi Harada, paying close attention to their quirks I've just talked about a couple of minutes ago, I suggest you check the following songs: Mosaic to Fairy Tail, which is composed by Kyohei Yamamoto, Dokeshi to Sadness, which is composed by Yuki Honda, and Miserable Masquerade, composed by Atsushi Harada. If you pay close attention to Mosaic to Fairy Tail, you will notice Kyohei Yamamoto's trademark style. Bring the brass and ridiculously technical mix of piano and guitars, and you have a song made for a cabaret or a jazz club. Yamamoto loves to play around with quiet and busy sections within his compositions. At the same time, you will notice that he doesn't particularly put an instrument on the spotlight. Instead, he makes sure that the soundstage is perfect and that the band is surrounding you. You get a 180 feel of the performance, which makes his compositions incredibly cinematic. Dokeshi to Sadness is ridiculously technical in its classic jazz sound. This is easily a song that only Yuki Honda, or if you will, Satoru Kuwabara, would compose. This is Honda's trademark technical composition style. He makes slow verses and incredibly intense choruses that keep the instrumentalization to a bare minimum. There is a bouncy twist to his composition. Now, Atsushi Harada is more contained in the way he conveys emotions in his compositions. He creates a balance between the emotional performance and the way the instrumentals complement that, and you can feel how balanced Miserable Masquerade is. There is also a layer of mystery in his compositions, and Miserable Masquerade perfectly makes that stand out. So if you listen to these three songs one after the other, like they are in the album, you will notice how different they sound like, although all are jazz and fairly mid-tempo tunes, with an interesting balance of swing jazz and classic jazz at their core. And to wrap up this episode, let's check Kan Takahiro. Stylish, sexy EDM made for the dance floor. This is Kan Takahiro's style as a composer for 2D music. If you see Kan Takahiro in the credits for a 2D song, you know that for sure you will have there a banger of a dance tune with some of the punchiest bass lines you can get. Kan Takahiro is a DJ and composer that has been active in the music industry since 2009. He is best known for composing electro house, dubstep and hardstyle EDM subgenres that are really heavy on the synth and bass lines. As a result, Takahiro's compositions are intense, powerful, even if down-tempo at times. He has a perfect grasp of building tension in a dance tune, making you high in the whole vibe he creates for each of his compositions. He's well known in the rave and dance scenes in Japan due to all of these. However, if you check his discography, which is quite extensive, you will notice that rave and dubstep are the foundations of his sound, something that, if you pay close attention to what he is composing for 2D music, is slightly different. Since 2016, he has been lending his talents as a DJ and composer to 2D music. First off, he was one of the composers invited for Reject's album, Reject Sound Collection Volume 3, My Link, and in 2018, the VAZZROCK franchise welcomed Kan Takahiro with open arms. His first composition for the franchise was Yuma Shirase and Sho Onoda's Break New Ground. In that song, you can notice how toned down Kan Takahiro's sound is, and that is because he was teamed up with ZACB, who you and I talked about on episode 134. Pairing up with someone as melodic in his compositions as ZACB helped ground Kan Takahiro's sound and make it more elegant, perfect for 2D music projects, which aren't usually that big fans of dubstep, rave or drum and bass as he is. Since then, he has composed songs for several characters in the VAZZROCK franchise, as well as he has been the arranger for some of Rockdown's songs. Perhaps his biggest composition so far for the VAZZROCK franchise, and the one that is closest to Kan Takahiro's origins as a DJ, is Turn Around Again, song performed by Reiji Amaha, voiced by Takuya Sato. This is a song that takes pride in its cinematic composition, creating a tight dance floor ambience, getting increasingly intimate and heavy on the bass as Takuya Sato closes the distance between him and the listener. Turn Around Again is by far Kan Takahiro's best composition to date in 2D music. Aside from the VAZZROCK franchise, with which he has been working with since 2018, he has also lent his talents to Procellarum and Six Gravity in the Tsukiuta franchise for their White Sparks and Painted Black CDs, as well as Tsukino Productions' Noir Revolution. In 2021, he started composing for Anthos in the Hanadol franchise, and yet again, he met ZACB, who had been there for his first big work in 2D music. Kan Takahiro and ZACB share composition credits in the sassy as hell and incredibly groovy down-tempo tune Persona by Chise, voiced by Wataru Komada. This is such an amazing composition, yet again grounding Takahiro's EDM sound to be stylish and incredibly addictive, while quite simple and melodic at its core. As you can tell, Kan Takahiro is basically working with the Movic groups, more specifically with the groups in the VAZZROCK, Tsukiuta, Hanadol and Likoli Project franchises. As far as his style goes, what makes him basically noticeable, I will say it is how clean his EDM sound is for 2D music. The same can't be said about his solo stuff. At the same time, the punchy, distorted bass lines paired up with the dreamy, reverbed piano melodies and atmospheric synths are a good way to spot him. There are few 2D music composers that compose EDM music this well, and particularly made for the dance floor without being overbearing. Kan Takahiro has, of course, adapted his solo sound to 2D music, and as such, treat his solo music and his 2D music as two completely different things. His compositions are more grounded, patient, have musicality to them, which are made to be sung, and are incredibly alluring. For fans of dance music, coming across a composition by Kan Takahiro will be a treat. And with this episode, you and I wrap up this series about composers for 2D music projects. These were just some of the most iconic composers you can find out there, but believe me, there are many more that are impressive and are responsible for creating some of your favorite songs. But let's give you the spotlight. Now tell me, do you have a favorite song composed by Yuki Honda, Kyohei Yamamoto, Atsushi Harada or Kan Takahiro? And if yes, which is that song and why do you love it? Let me know in the comments on YouTube, and remember, leave your comments as complex or as simple as they may be, and you can be featured on upcoming episodes of SEIYUU Lounge. Hit the subscribe button if you enjoyed this episode and don't want to miss the Hand That Feeds HQ's weekly male SEIYUU and music-related content. I'll return next week with another episode of SEIYUU Lounge. The next episodes are going to be a bit more eclectic, but I hope you had fun diving this deep into the people behind the music you love. Thank you for listening, and see you guys around.